Hello and welcome back. I hope you are well. In this video I'm going to show you my watercolour palettes. I have a variety of sizes for a variety of purposes. Let me know in the comments what watercolour palettes you like using and why. It's always fun to hear what supplies each of us like using and discussing our similarities and differences. I also have a new cloth here today. I've been using the same one for my backdrops of my videos for the entire time I've been on YouTube now. So I thought I'd change it up and use a different one. And yeah, let's get straight into the first watercolour palette. First up, we're going to look at my oldest palette. I was debating on whether to do this in order of the size of them or how long I've had them, and I've decided to go by how long I've had them. This is the Winsor and Newton Cotman palette, though the original colours are long gone now. I started my watercolour journey with the Cotman student grade colours back in 2016, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. They were a good jumping block for me, but once you move to artist grade watercolours, you really end up seeing what you've been missing. I continued to use this palette all the way up until now, but as I said, these are not the original colours. I use artist grade pigments now, and I have for a few years. I have in here, let's see if I can remember them all. This is PY150 Nickel Azo Yellow, but I think it's called Yellow Lake by Sennelier. It's the main mixing yellow I use now. That's Quin Rose PB19, Ultramarine Blue, Indanthrone Blue, Phthalo Turquoise, Dioxazine Violet, Transparent Pyrrole Orange, which is the old one by Daniel Smith. They've discontinued, I don't know if they've discontinued the pigment or if they've just have a different source of the pigment now, but I know that the tubes are completely different. It's less transparent, it's a slightly different hue, but I'm slowly getting through the last of my supply of this. There we have Perylene Maroon, Quinacridone Burnt Orange, which has also been discontinued, sadly, and then Yellow Ochre, Burnt Sienna, and Burnt Umber, so those are like my earth tones. And this palette I continue to use frequently. I change out the colours using half pans, or I've just filled the actual hollow itself with pigments that I know that I use constantly. So these are my main mixing pigments that I use in most of my palettes. And yeah, it's just a palette that is still really useful. It's super small. I tend to use it more with a water brush than the actual brush. This is the brush that came with it. So you get the tiny little brush. I still have it. It's lost its point a very long time ago by now. But yeah, I mainly use this for traveling now and with a water brush. So let's move on to the second palette. Second up, we have this metal tin. Once I started opening up to artist grade colours, I wanted somewhere to put them, especially somewhere I can easily move things around and change things. So this is now my experimenting palette, is probably the best way to put it. I put in colours in here to test them out, to test out different colour palettes, to try interesting new colours. Like this here is ultramarine pink, which has been interesting to play around with. It's quite pale. It's not got a lot of pigment load to it, but it's a beautiful shade. And when I originally got this tin was when I got my first set of artist grade watercolours, which was the 6 colour set by Daniel Smith of the essential tones. I think it's the essential colours set that they call it. It's a little 5mm milliliter tube of a warm and a cool version of each of the primaries, and I had them in full pans in this, but now I just use it for experimenting and trying different brands. So in here we have a different kind of yellow ochre. The main yellow ochre that I use is by Daniel Smith, but this one here is Isaro, I believe is how you pronounce it. So I've also got in here colours that I use frequently as well to make it a usable palette at the same time. I have my ultramarine in here and Indian Throne. We have burnt umber as well. Let's actually see if I can remember all of these. That's Lunar Earth. That's the PY 150. Daniel Smith Yellow Ochre, which I switched out from another palette I'll be showing you. And I think that's Quin Red. That's the Ultramarine Pink. Burnt Umber. Red Brown or Brown Red, it's PBR 25. The Yellow Ochre, that's Neutral Tint by M. Graham. Viridian by M. Graham. That is Phthalo Green, Indian Throne, and then Ultramarine Blue. So I remembered them, yay! And yeah, I now use this mainly for experimenting. I sometimes take it out traveling, but I don't as much. I'm not really sure why. I've just not been as tempted to take this out with me at the moment. So let's move on to the next. Up in the third spot we have what is my studio palette now. This is the largest palette I own, and it's not ideal for travel as a result. It's pretty big. It's not as big as some palettes you can get, but it's big. And let's see. You might have noticed that all of them are very messy. I debated cleaning them before this video, but this is how I keep them, and I do end up going back and using these puddles for sketches and things, so I want to show you the authentic experience of my palettes. Let's see if I can go through the colours. Some of these colours have been in here for a few years now, and I don't use them as much as I thought I would, especially this one. So I'm probably going to switch out that colour, definitely, at some point, and I'll just take it out. I won't waste it. I'll just pop it in to a little baggie or something. But we have here the PY 150 again, yellow, the Nickel Azo yellow. This little dot here is the remains of my New Gamboge from the Essentials set that I was mentioning by Daniel Smith. That's the very last of the tube there. I don't use it that often just because I find that this yellow mixes almost everything I need out of a bright yellow, and then I get the rest of the sort of earth yellows from yellow ochre. We have transparent pyrrole orange here. Again, that particular kind seems to be discontinued, so I'm a little bit loath to use it up, but I will. And then we have here the last of my, what's this one called? Is it Pyrrole Scarlet? It's the warm red from the 6 set, so that's the last of that tube. Then we have PV19 Quin Rose, we have Moonglow by Daniel Smith, Ultramarine, Indian Throne, as you can tell, my most used blues, and then Prussian Blue. I used to be obsessed with Prussian Blue when I first started getting into artist grade colours, and I don't use it as much now. I tend to go more for the Indian Throne, but I do still appreciate it in my studio palette. Then we have here, actually, I'm not sure which one this is. It's Cerulean Blue, but I think it's Chromium Cerulean Blue is its full name, by Daniel Smith as well. It's one that granulates really heavily. And then I have Amazonite Genuine. I only have it in this palette just because I find that I can get a very similar tone, but even more vibrant, from Phthalo Turquoise. But I do really, really love having this in my studio palettes. And then I have Phthalo Green Blue shade, Sap Green by Daniel Smith, and Yellow Ochre by Daniel Smith. We have Quin Burnt Orange, that's again discontinued now, And this is the Red Brown Brown Red, I always get it the wrong way around, by Shinhan. Burnt Umber. As you can see, there's no burnt sienna in this palette. When I was first putting this together, I wasn't really using burnt sienna that much. I have since gained more of an appreciation for burnt sienna, so I'm probably going to switch out this for burnt sienna. This is Payne's Grey. I don't really use Payne's Grey anymore. I mix my own greys. And as you can see, I've barely even touched this. So I'm probably going to just dig it out and then pop it into like a little pot or something, and I can use it for monochromatic studies. And then here I just have a little test blob. I mixed together ultramarine and Quin Rose together to make a slightly granulating purple. This ultramarine is by Sennelier, so it's not as heavily granulating. I do also have an ultramarine blue by, my mind's gone blank, by Schminke. And that one is way more granulating, which I will show you in a moment. The fourth palette that I want to show you is my Portable Painter Micro. This has appeared in some of my other videos in the past, including my preparing to go on a trip video, which I'll leave up here, and also I think it shows up in my travel supplies video for 2022, which I'll leave as well. This is the palette that I use for not just sketching outside and for traveling as well, but also for daily sketching inside the house, especially if I'm ill and I am in bed or whatever and I want to sketch, then this will just be in my pencil case, and it's small enough to just be in there and be a self-contained kit. I have a water brush and a little like towel that I have in there as well, and it's all self-contained that way. So I can sketch anywhere with this. I don't have the full-sized portable painter, I just have this micro one, but you can get a full-sized one. But this has lots of mixing space, and then this can either be used as a mixing area or you can fill it with water if you want to use actual brushes. And I use it both ways. Sometimes if I'm using a water brush, I'll put like a little towel or paper towel in there, and then it just holds that down while I'm sketching. And I have 6 colours in here. It's the same 6 as last year. I set up this palette in order to have transparent colours and also non-granulating colours. So in here you don't find ultramarine blue, I have Indanthrone blue as my blue. So again I have PY 150 Nicolazzo yellow, PV 19 Quin Rose, Indanthrone blue, which is PB 50, and then Phthalo turquoise by Sennelier, Red Brown by Shinhan, and this is Red Orange by Mission Gold. I'll just see if I have the tube for this. Ah, there we go. Because I can't remember the pigment. It's P073 and it is red orange. And as you can see there as well, it says it is semi-transparent. It's the only one that isn't fully transparent in this palette, but watered down it's pretty much as transparent as the other colours. It's only when you use it quite thick that the opacity really starts to come through. And I can even go travelling with it just like this, with a little thumb ring on the back, if I want a really, really, really tiny setup. So yeah, I've been using this palette a lot the last few months, probably the last 6 months. I've mainly been using this palette. I even used this palette for Funguary in February. So I've started to really, really get to know the 6 colours and their mixing capabilities, and it's been beneficial for me to learn more about limited palettes and to really push my mixing skills. And that's the last palette, but I do have something else to show you as well in the realm of watercolour palettes. Last up we have these little pots. I usually put 1 or 2 colours in these and then I can just pop them into my pocket or my pencil case with a water brush for sketching on the go. They're great with a water brush and maybe a towel or even just paper towel tissues, whatever is in your pocket. And I usually do monochrome or two-tone studies with them. So this is a warm cool setup. So I have burnt sienna and ultramarine in this one. This showed up in my travel supplies video because in combination with this palette, it means that I can then still have access to a slightly brighter blue and also another earth tone and add granulation if I wanted to while traveling. These both fit in my tiny pencil case, so it's not that much of a big deal for me to bring this along too. But I have also just chucked this in my bag or my pocket as well. I also have another one here, which is the same, but it's by different brands. This one is much more granulating because this is the Schminke Ultramarine and Daniel Smith Burnt Sienna. This one is the Sennelier Burnt Sienna and Sennelier Ultramarine. And the Sennelier Ultramarine is a lot smoother with less granulation. It still granulates, but it's much less textured than the Schminke. And then I also have this one here, which I set up in a recent short on YouTube, which you can check out if you want. This one's a little bit bigger. It's a little bit thicker as well, but still small enough to just fit in my pocket and my pencil case. This one has 4 colours in it. It's got the primaries and then an earth tone. So I've in here again the PY150 Nickel Lazo Yellow, the PV19 Quin Rose, and the Ultramarine Blue, and this one is the Schminke one, I believe. If I'm remembering correctly, it'll be in the video regardless. I showed the tubes for them. And this is Burnt Sienna, and this just allows for a little bit more mixing variety, but it's still super, super, super tiny that I can just pop in my pocket. And you'll notice that all of these are different sizes. So, and also this one has stuff on the lid. That's because all of these were reused and repurposed materials. These, you can buy these, they're just like little makeup pots. You can just get them on Amazon, or sometimes you can find them in stores, and you'll usually get them in 5ml, 10ml, 15ml, and you can get them in a variety of shapes with like screw-on lids or these kinds of lids. But I didn't buy these. My family might get them for samples and things like that, and then I end up taking them once they're done, and rather than them going in the bin or anything, I use them as watercolour palettes. So it's just something that I like to do to repurpose and reuse. Eventually I should be able to just clean these out and then probably recycle them if they are recyclable plastic. I don't think they say if they are or not, but for now at least I know that they're being reused and repurposed. And this one's particularly useful because the lid is white. It's a little bit easier to see the values of the greys I'm mixing, because if you mix these two colours together you get grey. And there you have it. These are my watercolour palettes at the moment as of 2023. I'll probably update you in the future on what I'm using and how I'm using these as well, if I change colours out and stuff like that. Again, please in the comments share what you like using for painting and why you like using them as well. I love discussing art supplies. It's very fun for me and I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for watching and I hope you have a good week. See you next time.